Welcome to Clotheshorse, the podcast that can say, like, listen, there's a lot of really horrible stuff happening in the world right now, and it's really hard to cope with it most days. But at least there's the comfort of soup, hot tea, and sweater season, and I am fully immersed in it right now. I'm your host, Amanda, and this is episode 183. My special guest this week is someone you all know and love. She's someone I also love and consider a leader in the slow fashion community. It's Dani of Picnicwear. Today, she and I are going to talk all about why sweaters are so, well, not so great these days. Dani is the perfect person for this conversation because in addition to being a major sweater aficionado, she is also a sweater designer. And as I've mentioned in the past, certain categories like denim, activewear, and sweaters are very specific niches and areas of expertise within the fashion industry. Like, if you start as a sweater designer, you kind of are always a sweater designer. Same thing if you do denim or what have you. They're very, very specific. Fortunately, I have also managed the sweater category at various different jobs. I have learned so much along the way. So I don't want to brag too much, but I kind of think we are the ideal pair to break down the decline of sweater quality during the fast fashion era. Now, we ended up talking for about 2.5 hours because obviously there was a lot to talk about. There always is. These things are complicated. I edited this down to 2 hours. It was very hard because I obviously enjoy talking to Dani way too much. And I thought about splitting this into 2 episodes. Like when we finished recording, I said to myself, this is going to be 2 episodes. But as I was listening and editing, it just didn't work that way. It felt incomplete when split in half. So today's entire episode will be our conversation. There'll be no audio essays this week, although trust me, there will be plenty next week because I received a lot of them. And there will be no other real info from me this week either. But I can assure you that this episode will be super educational. Before we jump into that, I just wanted to share one other little bit of personal news with all of you. And that is that Dustin and I have officially signed a lease on a house back in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where, well, it's not quite where Clotheshorse began because the first maybe like 10 episodes of Clotheshorse were actually written and produced in Philadelphia. But it's where I really think of Clotheshorse like growing, blossoming, all of those things. So I'm excited to be moving back. It's quite an epic move from Austin, Texas to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So December is going to be pretty hectic. We're making that move at the end of the year, which is like so much sooner than you think. But I'm really excited. I'm excited to be able to see all of my friends and family that live back there. I'm excited to be able to record IRL with people. I'm excited about all the great thrifting and many, many other things. Lancaster is really, really cool and it has its own budding slow fashion movement. So I'm excited to be back there. Okay, well, enough about me. Let's jump into this very long, but hopefully for you, because it was for me, very enjoyable conversation. All right, Dani, it's weird. You're like a regular in my mind, right? And I consider you one of the founders of this like modern slow fashion community that we live in, but you haven't been on the podcast in like 2 years.
It's crazy. I cannot believe it's been that long. I realized it was that long though when I was like thinking back to when we were talking about doing an episode together. And it was like we wanted to do one on like trends and trend cycles. And then I told you, I was like, my mental health is not there right now.
Right.
I don't really feel like I can do this without like crying because I was like, found out I was pregnant, but also my insurance was canceled.
Oh God.
Like when my insurance company found out. So that's a whole long story. But yeah, when I was thinking about when and then before that it had been like a year. So now that's been, or maybe it had been 6 months or something. So yeah, over 2 years. Yes. Long and short of it.
We should really do that trend episode someday.
We actually should. Yes, I agree. I have since we started talking about it, I've had like so many thoughts on what we could talk about.
Yeah, seriously. I whenever you want to, I think that would be really fun. Because I was actually thinking, it was weird. I was thinking about trends this morning as I was getting dressed, because I was thinking I put something on and I was like, is this uncool? And then I was like, who the fuck cares?
Yes, who cares?
But because when you work in this industry for a long time, you're like seven years ahead of everybody else sometimes. Yeah. And you by the time something is the trend, you're like, oh, I'm so over that, right?
Yeah, for sure. But I feel like I've been making great strides at unpacking that, because I had a moment this weekend where I put on an outfit and I was thinking about each article of clothing I was wearing. And first of all, let me preface it by saying I looked in the mirror and I was like, I look fucking rad. But then I realized wow, all the clothes I'm wearing are very old. Some of these I've had for 6 years, this, whatever, all these things I had acquired pre-pandemic, and yet I still felt awesome and not uncool. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I was, people are always asking me oh, well, where do you buy clothes? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I actually really don't buy clothes because I have a ton that I really love.
Yes.
And when I look at what's in my closet, to me, they are trendless.
Yeah.
And it's the ones that were the most attached to a trend at the time that I ended up, selling on Poshmark or something.
100%. Yeah, completely.
And it's just all propaganda, right? Especially as, today we're going to talk about sweaters. Spoiler, everyone. But as I was looking through websites looking at sweaters today and yesterday, I was like, sweaters really kind of doing the same thing they have been for a long time. And
I was thinking the same thing when I was doing some research. I haven't really looked at those websites in a really long time.
Same.
And I started looking and I was like, and I even looked at some of the brands I used to work for. And I was like, wait, this isn't actually that much different from what I was designing 5 years ago for these brands. And that kind of shocked me because I think, honestly, a lot of it could be the same design, but the chances are that the person who bought that thing I designed 5 years ago doesn't have it anymore. But for whatever reason, they might be buying this new one. And it's well, there are many reasons why they don't have that old thing, but I don't think it's specifically because it wasn't a good style or something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we'll get into the reasons why they don't have that sweater anymore.
We'll get into that for sure. I'm excited to talk to you today about sweaters. And this whole thing happened thanks to the power of the internet. When you sent out an email from Picnicwear, your business, when you talked about a recent Amanda Mull piece for The Atlantic, which most of you by now who are listening to this have probably read, but if not, don't worry, I'm going to share the link in the show notes. The article was called "Your Sweaters Are Garbage." Approximately 9,000 people on social media sent it to me in a 24-hour period, which was good because I might have missed it. I only got it
sent to me by my dad. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I read it, and we're going to talk a lot about it. There's nothing wrong with this article, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Anyway, so Dani sent out an email in which she talked about it and why her recent sweater collection is different. And I posted a screenshot of it in stories because I was like, this is a really good email, right? It's educational. This is the grossest analogy, but I use it all the time when I'm giving people business advice, was sometimes you got to show how the sausage is made, right? To explain why your business works the way it does. And I thought it was on point. And I shared that. And then you were like, hey, should I just go on Clotheshorse and talk about this or whatever? And then I was like, great. Okay, sold. Let's set this up.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for us to talk about this because I will tell you, since even you and I talked to prep for this episode, in the past week or two, I have been seeing more and more conversations, specifically on TikTok, where I spend more time now than I used to, which before was 0 time. So it's all relative. A lot of conversations coming up about why are clothes so crappy now?
Yeah.
You and I have been living in this for a really long time, so we saw it happen. And the clothes have been crappy for a long time. I want to assure all of you. Someone did a TikTok, a content creator named Meredith Lynch on TikTok, and a ton of people tagged me and were like, "You should ask Clotheshorse podcast why clothes suck." And then I was like, "Okay, well, I'll make a video and I'll explain like how this all happened." And it's just been like starting this larger conversation. And I even was on Reddit yesterday, and someone was like, "Have you guys noticed that clothes suck now?" So I think we're at this like moment of reckoning. I like to believe.
Yeah.
But we're finally figuring it out, because I will tell you, as I said in my reel about this, that clothes have been crappier for a long time. And on the buying and design side, we assumed at some point customers would get sick of it, but they like never did. So we just kept doing it. Not like nefariously, you know, but just like, why wouldn't we?
It became habit. Like, this is what we do now.
Right.
But it is interesting to me that like you are seeing this emerge as well, because I'm seeing people respond in this way. And to me, I'm just like, yeah, like what? Of course they're garbage. What are you talking about? Like,
they've been garbage for so long.
So it's just I'm really wondering what that tipping point was for people to realize that. I'm here for it.
Me too.
It's just really interesting to me that it's like kind of taken this long. And I hope more people realize it and question it, and consider how that can affect their own shopping habits.
Totally. I think it's one of those things where you kind of have the feeling that things aren't as good as they used to be, but you don't say it out loud. And then you finally do. And then everyone around you is like, yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And I feel like people also, I mean, people don't understand how clothes are made. You've said this 1,000 million quadrillion times.
Yeah.
And they don't know what makes a good garment from a bad garment. But, you know, if you have two next to each other, like, you know, you're looking at both, like most people who are not like educated in clothing construction or what have you will be able to be like, oh, that one's shitty. This one's well made, and not really know why, but like, it's just this, like, you can just tell. But like, I wish that people could be a little bit better versed about like what makes clothing good and what, you know, good quality and what doesn't. So obviously we're going to talk about the specifics of sweaters today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I said I don't buy a lot of clothes. When I do buy clothing, I try to shop secondhand. And regardless of whether I buy something or not, I try on a lot of clothes at thrift stores. Like, I'm an avid thrifter, and I just like to know what's up. So if I see something that is labeled with my size and it still has the tag on it, I'm like, I gotta know. What is the fatal flaw of this garment?
Good call, yeah.
Right? And it's always just the most ridiculous fit. Like, I tried on this Shein dress, okay? It was really cute.
Wow.
I was like, am I gonna thrift a Shein dress? Because Dustin was like, that is a really good dress. And I put it on, and my arm wouldn't go through the armhole above my elbow. I was like, okay, well, like, I know why that's here. And it was like a fatal flaw to that garment. Like, there was no fixing it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's how I see a lot of really bad fit, really weird sewing that doesn't make any sense. And of course, just like a lot of bad fabrics that are already snagged and the tags are still on. So it's pretty bad out there right now. I gotta say, like, I don't know if it's really gotten worse than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it's been going strong. And I will also say this, listen, I have many issues with Shein. I do not support shopping there. If you gotta do what you gotta do, like, no shame, right? But I will tell you that the Shein quality is no worse than the quality I'm seeing on other labels at the thrift store.
Yeah.
Like, the one thing that is consistent,
yeah,
it's just all not good, right?
Yeah.
And so when people are like, I don't thrift Shein, I'm like, I don't know. If you're thrifting other brands, you should just give it a try. If it fits you and you like it, you're going to wear it.
True.
You know?
I completely agree with that. And like, you know, I think unpacking like what creates the price tag that's on the clothing, like demystifying that, which you do a lot, will kind of help people understand that it's like, just because this top is $9 from Shein, but like this other top from like Zara is like $29, doesn't mean that the $29 one is automatically better quality. It's just like, think about, for example, just one example out of many, like marketing budgets. Like Zara has like beautiful photography. Their website is like, oh my God, I'm shopping at like a contemporary brand, you know? You're paying for that in that $29 garment. So like, yes, we're talking about two cheap brands, but like at the root of it, like there doesn't have to be much difference between the products themselves because you're paying for other things too.
And I think that's a really good call out that we're going to be coming back to time and time again as we unpack sweaters today, that you cannot spot quality or lack thereof by the price tag. Because plenty of things that are expensive are the same as the lower price stuff. That doesn't mean that like there aren't great things out there that are high quality, long lasting, that are a higher price point, right? But when we assume that the dividing line, the way we can tell is price, we are wrong. For sure. And I think that there are a lot of brands out there that sort of trade on that's part of their branding, that somehow their stuff is exceptional. And it's not because it's the same factories, it's the same fabrication, just better branding.
Yeah, I mean, luxury fashion is the perfect example of that. Like just the most insane inflated prices, but it's described as luxury, which I feel is very unfair that they get to use the word luxury, because it's like, what gave you the right to call yourself luxury?
Oh my gosh. And so much of it is
that a lot lately.
And so much of it is polyester.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's like these crazy price tags. And I'm like, you know what's luxurious to me? Being able to buy from a small business or a maker and like know that like the person who's emailing you is the person who made your garment. That is luxury to me. Not like buying something with a logo on it that's made out of polyester but costs like $3,000, but like everyone knows you spent $3,000 when they see you wear it. That's not luxurious. I don't know how that's considered luxurious, but it's like certainly not my definition of luxury.
Absolutely. I mean, let's like normalize shopping small and from like independent designers as the true luxury, right? And not this nonsense that, I mean, anyway, so so we were inspired by the Amanda Mull piece. And like I said, I'm going to share it in the show notes. And I know, Dani, you have some caveats that you want to share there. I just wanted to read one little passage from it that I think, like, I'm going to start by saying, I enjoyed this article. I'm glad it exists. I think it opened people's eyes. I kind of wish that Amanda would have talked to people who actually work in the industry as designers and buyers, because
me too.
I think it tells a stronger story than this, actually. But she did talk to Imran Islam, who is a textile science professor and knit expert at FIT. And I'm just going to read this little...
Was it FIT or was it at a North Carolina university? Because I'm like, I DM'd that person. So
I'm pretty sure she said FIT in the article.
Okay, sorry. I could be wrong.
Let me see. What if it was the Fashion Institute of Technology of North Carolina?
It might have been another...
Oh, it's a different person. Sorry. Yeah, Andre West is the other person she talked to.
Okay, sorry.
And like, so, they obviously have a broad range of knowledge to share here, these two professors. But ultimately, like, there is something to be said for like working in there and like seeing how this stuff goes down. And so today I hope that we can shed a light on that. But this passage, I think, was like getting closer to where we are right now, right? So according to Islam, if you push down retail prices with cheap labor, they'll no longer bear the use of quality materials. If you push down retail prices with cheap materials, they'll no longer bear the wages of garment workers with more skill and experience. If you push down both as much as possible, you stand a pretty good chance of gaining market share. So basically, if the whole story of Clotheshorse practically is that we have become kind of addicted to clothing being cheap. Like our concept of the value of really anything at this point is so messed up by the era of fast everything, which is like new stuff as much as possible, as often as possible at low prices, right? And so every industry has jumped on this. And in fact, the theme of next year for Clotheshorse is going to be unpacking fast everything, not even just fast fashion.
Yeah.
But we know that our sense of value is skewed, and clothing specifically is cheaper now than it was in the 1990s. So to get sweaters to be cheaper to fit in and be successful in the era of fast everything, you have to keep the prices low. You have to lower them, right? And so you have two options here. You can push on like the actual cost of producing the garments, which means, suppressing wages for all the garment workers involved, the yarn factory, all of the stuff, pushing down on that. Or which is where we always start in apparel buying, you swap out the materials, right? So you switch to cheaper materials. And basically what Imran Islam is saying in this article is that if you push too hard on the wages, you won't get high quality product. If you push too hard on the quality of the yarn itself, then you also won't get good product. And people, no matter how skilled, won't be able to make good things out of them. So it won't be successful. So you kind of got to push on both of them at the same time. Yeah. And then you can be successful because neither will be too bad. Right?
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a lot about that today and kind of how we get there. Now, Dani, you had a caveat about this sweater article, and I want you to I want you to lay it out there because you're right and you're an expert.
Yeah. I mean, this is I kind of spoke to you in more detail about this. I didn't put this in my newsletter because it was like a little like kind of just defeating the purpose of the whole article. But my whole point was that so Amanda Mall, what she does in the article is that she basically says that this whole conversation started because some comedian shared a photo of Billy Crystal next to a photo of, what is that actor's name?
I don't know. I'm terrible at actors.
I don't remember. Some modern actor. And both of them are like in the same pose. Basically, this modern actor is like, is mimicking the pose of Billy Crystal. And they're both wearing ivory cable knit sweaters. And she said, and it brought up the question of like, why are sweaters just so poor quality now? And she's comparing the Billy Crystal one that was from the 80s or what have you. And then the current one, which I believe is like a $400 Ralph Lauren sweater or something. And while I totally agree with her point, I think what was interesting is the examples that were given, because just by looking at the two sweaters, the one on the left to me that Billy Crystal was wearing is like a very lofty acrylic sweater. Like I can see that sweater in a thrift store. I've seen it time and time again. And the one on the right is a very expensive cable knit. It's got different cables across the sweater, which is more expensive to knit. And it's densely knit, which is more expensive to knit, which we'll get into that a little bit later. So when I look at them, I'm like, oh, the sweater on the right is like, would absolutely be more expensive to produce. So in a weird way, she's kind of defending her point, is that like, we don't really know what a expensive sweater, like a beautifully made sweater is anymore.
No. Oh, absolutely not.
And so it was just like, to me, I loved the article, but I just kept getting stuck on that point because like I could tell just from looking at it that the sweater on the left was like probably 100% acrylic, if not like 50 acrylic, 50 wool, 50 cotton or something like that. But I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, and I will say like sweaters are definitely crappier in general now than they were in the 80s when Billy Crystal was wearing that sweater for a lot of different reasons and in a lot of different ways that we're going to talk about. But sweaters being a mix of synthetic and natural fibers is kind of nothing new, because that's where customers tend to cast their vote, which we're also going to talk about today. Because I'll tell you, a lot of people who sent me this article were like, yeah, I don't know why we can't all switch to natural fibers. And I'm like, y'all don't want nice things, okay? Like, we'll talk about that today. But you know that I'm right, Dani. I was like, when you included that in your email, I was just like, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So first things first, I would like to ask all of you, are you reading the content labels on the things you buy? And are you looking on the websites before you make the purchases at the content, which in most cases is there, but not always? I kind of question how often people are looking at that because in my experience, people choose sweaters and pretty much everything else they wear by how it feels. Right? Yeah. And I say this all the time, but people think the 70s was the golden era of polyester. I mean, you can close your eyes. I can like feel a 70s double knit polyester garment like in my hand. Like it's so visceral.
You could spot it from a mile away in a thrift store. Like you know it from across the thrift store. Like you can see it.
That fabric doesn't really exist anymore. But we actually live in the golden era of polyester right now, with about 65 to 70% of all garments made being polyester in one way or another. And it's because it's cheap, right? Now, as a review for everyone, what is polyester? Well, polyester is made from fossil fuels. It is literally the same fibers that you would find in a plastic water bottle. That PET fiber, and it is just spun, stretched, all kinds of things to turn it into fabric, right? But it starts in the same way, which means it's not biodegradable. It means, yes, it literally is plastic. I don't even want to. Sometimes I start to get into like a mental health spiral thinking about what polyester clothing could be leaching onto my body as I'm wearing it. It certainly sheds microplastics every time you wash it, even sometimes when you're wearing it. And it's not a good story, but it has become the way clothes are made because it is cheap. And when we started in my career to really start shifting into polyesters around 2008, 2009, during the recession, we thought it would be a temporary thing because we really thought there was no way that customers would be into this long term. And guess what? Customers didn't care. So we kept doing it. And I'll tell you, polyester, the technology for it is so good. It has progressed so much since the 1970s that you can't guess polyester by looking at it or feeling it even, unless you're a major textile expert.
And I think another note on that is like when we talk about the content labels is you're saying polyester, but it's kind of more encompassing than that. It's like synthetic fibers in general. Like, to be totally honest, like with sweaters, like I very rarely, like you said earlier, most sweaters are right now are like a blend of like a lot of different fibers. Yeah. Sometimes it's like 6 in a row and you're like, wow, that's crazy. But it actually is pretty seldom that polyester is in there. And so there are other synthetic fibers that are 100% made up of chemicals, just like polyester is, that come under different names like polyamide, PBT, nylon, spandex, also known as lycra, elastane, like the list goes on. So like you will probably more likely see those fiber names in your content label than like polyester itself.
It's true. And I was looking across the internet and getting myself riled up looking at sweaters. And one thing that I noticed time and time again is that in many cases, the retailer would like the description, the name for the style would be like such and such wool sweater, such and such alpaca sweater. And when you clicked into the content, alpaca or wool would be one of the most minor parts of the blend, or it might be 33% polyamide and then 33% wool, and then a bunch of other ones following that. But the likelihood of you going online right now, I mean, and they exist, right? I saw it on Everlane. I saw it on a couple of other sites. There are places that are selling full natural fiber sweaters, but not a lot. And not a lot of full natural fiber sweaters, right?
One of my faves at one of my previous jobs was we had a sweater called the Hint of Cashmere sweater, which you have to give it to them for saying hint of, because 3%, yeah, I would say that's a hint. That is
a dash.
Maybe even not worth noting, but let's just put it in the title of the sweater.
Yeah, that's great. So you don't get your expectations too high.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, all of these synthetics start as petroleum. And, it's like melted, spun, smushed around, all kinds of things happen. But ultimately, the technology is so good that you could almost feel some of these fibers and think like, wow, this feels like a cloud, right? This feels soft.
Yeah.
And that brings me, now you're going to use a term that gives me major traumatic flashbacks to being a buyer.
Yeah.
I will tell you that as a buyer, we rarely would sit around in meetings with design or production, and no one would say, this is 12% cashmere and 37% nylon, of 40% polyamide. No one said that, right? That didn't happen. We pass it around and we feel it, and it's like, oh, this feels so nice. This feels so cozy. We feel so. Go ahead and say it. Say it, Dani.
Yummy. So yummy. I love this yarn. It's so yummy.
Yeah. Yeah, the yum factor, right? Yeah. You haven't lived until you've seen a bunch of adults sit around a table, passing around swatches going, yummy, yum. Yeah, it's real. And it's like extra gross when you think about it now, because you're like, oh, y'all are like rubbing plastic me like, yummy. Oh, yeah, so exactly. Good. Right? But this is like the more yums it got from everyone in the meeting, the more likely that sweater was going to be a bestseller, because customers would come in. Because
that's how the customer would feel when they smush their hands into it.
Absolutely. I mean, I would also hear things like, it feels so expensive. Okay.
Yes.
The moment that someone says, this feels so expensive, that means it's ridiculously cheap.
Yeah.
Looks so expensive. Same thing. Oh, it's so luxe. So also not good.
Yes,
not a good
luxe. I was going to say luxe is the other one.
Oh, so gross. And really, like, what it is it's all about is like, okay, we got to hit this price, but we also have to like appeal to the customer's like sensory, I don't know, just like sensory needs, wants. And I say this all the time. I was so glad you said it in your email, Dani. Customers think they want wool, they want alpaca, they want natural fibers, but that is not actually what they will buy. And it has been the bane of my existence my entire career.
Yeah, me too. It's so, so frustrating. I am like a wool addict. Like, I love a scratchy wool sweater. Like, not that all wool sweaters have to be scratchy, but like, you layer that and it like looks amazing, keeps you warm as hell, still breathable. You like literally don't have to wash it and it won't smell for like a long time. Let's be real. Wool is like amazing. And yet like we would pick out a yarn that we loved and it's like 5% wool or something. And we would get so many bad reviews that like, this sweater is so scratchy. And I'm like, did they receive the same sweater? Like, I don't understand how anyone would describe this as scratchy. Like, what is going on here? This is absurd. It's 5% wool. Everything else is synthetic. Like, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. It sucks. It sucks. Like, in my experience, people really go for the most plasticky yarns.
Yeah.
They're lofty, they're fluffy, they're soft, they're cozy, they're yummy.
Delicious.
There was this fabrication we sold for years at Urban Outfitters that was called brushed. And it wouldn't have been like in the sweaters area. It was in like heavy knits. That was like the
we like brushed hachi. Like sometimes that fell into the sweaters category because even though it definitely wasn't a sweater, like to the customer, they might call it a sweater. So it was always kind of like juggled back and forth. Can I just make a comment though? You just said when I used to work at Urban Outfitters.
Oh yeah. So Dani was like, why don't you ever say Urban Outfitters? Because that's where you worked or the other places you worked. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, back when I started Clotheshorse, I had just been let go from my job at Nuuly, which is the rental brand that is...
I'm so proud of you, Amanda.
Thank you. That is owned by Urban Outfitters. And as part of my severance agreement, which they gave me, I've said this famously, they gave me 2 weeks of severance and cut off my insurance in the middle of a global pandemic when I wasn't going to get a job for like a year. I almost didn't sign this agreement because it was like only 2 weeks of pay, but I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to us next. So I am going to sign this agreement. And they were like, as part of this agreement, you can never say anything bad about the company publicly or even tell anybody unless they are completely directly connected to your financial management, how little severance we gave you. So I am like, Dani was like, that was years ago. Like, you got to be set free. So I'm setting myself free. If I get an ugly letter, you'll all be the first to hear about it. But we're not seeing anything.
Are you just making me culpable of this now?
No,
I don't. You're telling everyone that I'm the one to blame.
Okay, so last year I talked to a lawyer about this because it had been on my mind specifically. Like it felt unfair because people stan these brands that are under the Urban umbrella, and it felt like I was complicit with my silence in a weird way. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a lawyer who was like, honestly, this severance agreement, should they decide to try to take you to court, is not going to stand up because the balance of power is so messed up at this point that it's like a global pandemic. You're not going to get a job for a long time. It's very clear, right? That you would be like kind of forced to sign this agreement. So,
totally fair.
And it's a really bad look for them.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when I was working at Urban back in the day, we would sell a lot of this brush fabrication, and it was like candy for children. Like the first year we debuted it, like people could not get enough of it. And it was like 900% polyester.
I'm literally sweating thinking about the fabric.
It's so gross, but it was very like fluffy because it was brushed. Like after the fabric was woven, it was brushed to give it this like lofty layer on top of it that felt cozy. It's not unlike like all that polar fleece kind of stuff too. That's all plastic as well.
Yeah.
But that was like we just couldn't keep it in stock. And it was one of those things like you wear it once or twice and it pills to all hell. Like it falls apart in the washer, that kind of thing. And I always, when I think about like what customers, or not what, but like how customers choose when they're shopping for clothing, especially when we talk about sweaters, heavier fabrications like that, that always comes up in my mind as like the prime example of how customers choose hand feel over anything else, always.
Yeah, and it's also, especially when it comes to sweaters, that is a very tactile type of garment. So it does make sense in that regard. But also we have to say, like, people aren't educated. People don't understand. Like I understand that when you brush the fibers on a fabric, you're bringing those fibers to the surface, right? And when you bring, like, what is a pill? First of all, a pill is what happens when the friction of fibers rubbing up against each other, right? So if you're bringing all those fibers to the surface and it's kind of just all sitting there in the surface with this brushed effect, you're basically like giving those fibers a place to move around and like rub up against each other.
Yeah, you're giving them a head start on pilling.
Yeah, and by bringing them out of the woven or knit fabric itself, you're also like how to put it, like weakening the actual structure of the fabric to begin with. So you're bringing it to the surface, which promotes it to pill, but you're also removing it from the structure, which makes it weaker, thus susceptible to holes, to bagging out, to just normal wear and tear that should take a long time to happen. You're basically like giving it a kickstart. Yeah. Like you said.
So it is a garment with a short lifespan. Now, do I think the designers and buyers and production people who worked on that think of it that way? No, of course not, right? They're just like doing their jobs. The people who sold it to you in the store aren't thinking that either. But that is the reality of these kinds of garments, is that they have a very short lifespan right out of the gate, no matter how careful you are when you care for them, right?
Yeah.
Some of them are just like these brush fabrications, for example, are going to pill just from existing, just from you wearing your coat over it to go out and run an errand, So it makes me sad. And it's like often when people are like, well, if we just switched everything to natural fibers, everything would be better. Like when I hear that, I'm like, that's just like not how it works.
Yeah. And I also want to say that like, pilling is not innately a sign of a poor quality fiber or garment or something like that. Pilling is natural and it will happen over time. And even natural fibers will pill. Cotton will pill. Hello, cashmere will pill. Like pilling is natural, but it's like when you combine all these different traits together, it's like the pilling is one of many things that make that a poor garment or a poor, like not a long-lasting fabric or fiber.
Totally. You can only shave your sweater so many times before there's nothing left there.
Exactly. Because just like what I was saying, just like brushing, shaving is like taking parts of the fiber away. So shaving your sweaters is great. Like I wouldn't tell people not to do that. You should absolutely do that if you've got pills, but it's not something that should be done all the time. Like if you're having to shave a garment after every single wear, eventually the fibers are going to weaken so much that they're going to create holes because there's no more fiber keeping it together. So yeah, that makes total sense that it would withstand one more wear from the consumer. But once it came back, ultimately, like I wouldn't be surprised if there were holes.
Let's take a moment to thank some of the incredible small businesses who keep Clotheshorse going via their generous Patreon support. Selena Sanders, a social impact brand that specializes in upcycled clothing using only reclaimed, vintage, or thrifted materials, from tea towels, linens, blankets, and quilts. Sustainably crafted in Los Angeles, each piece is designed to last in one's closet for generations to come. Maximum style, minimal carbon footprint. Shift Clothing out of beautiful Astoria, Oregon, with a focus on natural fibers, simple hardworking designs, and putting fat people first. Discover more at shiftwheeler.com. Late to the party, creating one-of-a-kind statement clothing from vintage, salvaged, and thrifted textiles. They hope to tap into the dreamy memories we all hold. Floral curtains, a childhood dress, the wallpaper in your best friend's rec room, all while creating modern, sustainable garments that you'll love wearing and have for years to come. Late to the Party is passionate about celebrating and preserving textiles, the memories they hold, and the stories they have yet to tell. Check them out on Instagram at Late to the Party People. Vino Vintage, based just outside of LA. We love the hunt of shopping secondhand because you never know what you might find. Catch us at flea markets around Southern California by following us on Instagram at vino.vintage so you don't miss our next event. Gabriella Antonis is a visual artist, an upcycler, and a fashion designer. But Gabriella Antonis is also a feminist micro-business with radical ideals. She's the one-woman band trying to help you understand why slow fashion is what the world needs. If you find yourself in New Orleans, Louisiana, you may buy her ready-to-wear upcycled garments in person at the store Slow Down at 2855 Magazine Street. Slow Down NOLA only sells vintage and slow fashion from local designers, and Gabriella's garments are guaranteed to be in stock in person, but they also have a website so you may support this woman-owned and run business from wherever you are. If you're interested in Gabriella making a one-of-a-kind garment for you, DM her on Instagram at slowfashiongabriella to book a consultation. Please follow her on Instagram at slowfashiongabriella. That's Gabriella with one L. Dylan Page is an online clothing and lifestyle brand based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Our products are chosen with intention for the conscious community. Everything we carry is animal-friendly, ethically made, sustainably sourced, and cruelty-free. Dylan Page is for those who never stop questioning where something comes from. We know that personal experience dictates what's sustainable for you, and we are here to help guide and support you to make choices that fit your needs. Check us out at dylanpage.com and find us on Instagram at dylanpagelifeandstyle. Salt Hats, purveyors of truly sustainable hats, hand-blocked, sewn, and embellished in Detroit, Michigan. Find us on Instagram at Salt Hats. Gentle Vibes Vintage. We are purveyors of polyester and psychedelic relics. We encourage experimentation and play not only in your wardrobe, but in your home too. We have thousands of killer vintage pieces ready for their next adventure. See them all on Instagram at Gentle Vibes Vintage. Thumbprint is Detroit's only fair trade marketplace, located in the historic Eastern Market. Our small business specializes in products handmade by empowered women in South Africa, making a living wage, creating things they love like hand-painted candles and ceramics. We also carry a curated assortment of sustainable and natural locally made goods. Thumbprint is a great gift destination for both the special people in your life and for yourself. Browse our online store at thumbprintdetroit.com and find us on Instagram at thumbprintdetroit. High Energy Vintage is a fun and funky vintage shop located in Somerville, Massachusetts, just a few minutes away from downtown Boston. They offer a highly curated selection of bright and colorful clothing and accessories from the 1940s to the 1990s for people of all genders. Husband and wife duo Wiley and Jessamy handpick each piece for quality and style, with a focus on pieces that transcend trends and will find a home in your closet for many years to come. In addition to clothing, the shop also features a large selection of vintage vinyl and old school video games. Find them on Instagram at High Energy Vintage, online at highenergyvintage.com, and at markets in and around Boston. Vagabond Vintage DTLV is a vintage clothing, accessories, and decor reselling business based in downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. Not only do we sell in Las Vegas, but we're also located throughout resale markets in San Francisco, as well as at a curated boutique called Lux and Ivy, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Jessica, the founder and owner of Vagabond Vintage DTLV, recently opened the first IRL location located in the Arts District of downtown Las Vegas on August 5th. The shop has a strong emphasis on 60s and 70s garments, single-stitch tees, and dreamy loungewear. Follow them on Instagram at Vagabond Vintage DTLV and keep an eye out for their website coming fall of 2022. So there's no easy fix for this other than changing how sweaters work. But, you know, we're going to talk about how sweaters come to exist as they are right now. But I'm going to tell you, I think that our brains, our human brains, we often want a quick fix, an easy black and white fix where we're like, oh, if we do X, then Y won't be a problem anymore. So like, for example, people, every time I post about like some sort of labor issue overseas, right? Someone will say, well, if we made everything in the United States, that wouldn't happen. And it's like, you'd think that, but actually, LA has tons of forced labor and wage theft and everything else. So nope, not a fix either, right? Or another one that comes up all the time, every time I talk about polyester or any synthetics is, well, if we just started making all of our clothes out of natural fibers again, we wouldn't have a problem. And actually, we would have a major problem because we cannot continue to consume clothing the way we do now, no matter what it's made of. And if we shifted to wool, cotton, other natural fibers, what we would have is a different environmental emergency on our hands, which would be like lack of farmland, a water shortage, and so much more. So there is no like, oh, well, if we just do X, then Y is fixed. No, unless the X that we're going to do is buy less stuff in the first place. That's like the only solution, right?
What is that? You used to always share this quote, or quote, meaning like you used to always say it yourself, something like there is no magic fiber that we can like, that allows us to continue to consume at the rate that we are now. Like
exactly.
I can't remember exactly what
you said pretty much exactly what I would say, that there's no magic fiber or magic fabric that lets us overconsume without repercussion.
Yeah.
Like it all has a catch, right? And I almost would say, because I've read studies about this, that if we switched everything to 100% natural fibers, but we continued to buy and consume the way we do right now, it would actually be worse for the planet than it is with us over-consuming all of these synthetic fabrics, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Because that's how intense the impact of cotton, for example, is, and a lot of other natural fibers. They are so intensive in terms of water and land use.
Well, also, I will add that, like, when synthetic fibers were first coming into the scene, like, turn of the last century, before that, whenever that was, one of the great things about it was how how much more accessible it was, because back then, you know, shipping like silk or wool from wherever it was produced was really, really expensive. But with synthetic fibers, you could do that anywhere because all you needed was chemicals, basically, and you didn't need all of the human power to, you know, raise the crops, to like card the cotton, etc. It was like a lot of automated things. Mm-hmm. So like, if we were to switch to all natural fibers, there would be a lot of like human cost within that too, because of course, in order to make it affordable, we'd have to have like massive exploitation to make it as like easy to produce as synthetic fibers are.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the most egregious human rights violations in the garment supply chain happen in the area of cotton. In India, we have a lot of schemes that exploit young women, like these dowry schemes where they come and work in a cotton mill for a few years in exchange for a dowry, and then they're basically like trapped there for years. Then when they leave, they have very little money because they've been nickeled and dimed from their agreement. You know, we can't not talk about the Uyghur Muslims in China, and really like many other religious groups and dissidents in China are put into these work camps where they're cultivating cotton or doing other manufacturing. That's actually now also happening and has actually been happening for quite a while in the synthetic fabric realm in China too. But I mean, cotton is like across the world, there's a lot of forced labor involved in cultivating cotton. So we like the only simple answer is that we need to buy less stuff, but it's like there's no money in saying y'all should buy less, right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality. It's not a sexy story, but
exactly.
It's a true story.
But you know what is a sexy story is like yarn made out of tires, like old tires or something. So like that's the thing that we get pushed all the time is like these really crazy regenerative yarns that are like super sustainable and circular. And it's like, no, like what does it take to make a yarn out of a tire? I'm tired. I really hope there are no yarns made out of tires. I have no idea. I believe it though. Like,
I know. I just had this visceral moment, like the smell of a tire, and I was like, "Wow!"
But like, let's be real. Like, no matter what these things are, like, it is a huge chemical process. I mean, even like, you know, I'll be honest. My sister like is always telling me like, "Oh yeah, but it's bamboo," and I'm like. So bamboo is rayon. Like bamboo is a tree. How much do you think it takes to like make that that bark, that tree pulp into a soft, luxurious fiber? A shit ton of chemicals and processing. So like, I think that like, there's also a lot of like greenwashing in that regard too, because like I see bamboo as being like, on like, you know, so many different things that make it seem like it's like a really good, like sustainable fiber to use when it has so many issues as well.
Yeah, that like there's just no easy solution because or I should say, there's no easy solution that just lets you keep shopping. And unfortunately, like if you're like Nike or any other retailer out there, I think Nike, because I think they made stuff out of recycled tires. That's why they're on the top of my brain. But like if you're one of these brands, you can't say like, hey, y'all, just like buy less stuff. It's the best thing for the world.
Yeah.
Well, what are the shareholders going to say?
Right.
You know, so instead it's like, here's this other scheme that actually might be worse in the long run. And yeah, it's just, it's like the genie, we let the genie of overconsumption out of the bottle and we need to jam it back in. And it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Because I like, honestly, like Dani, I think about this a lot. And I think all of us, our community, we need to, unfortunately, it feels unfair. We're going to have to do the work to put that genie back in the bottle because the industries out there are not going to do it.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I said this, I think I said this in a thread a while ago, is that it's like, it's very frustrating that like the labor at demystifying, like what goes into garment production, what, you know, the ethics, the process, the like environmental toll, all that like education is put on the backs of small businesses and like makers who nobody's paying them to do this work of educating. Nobody's funding that. And to be honest, like most of us aren't really making money off of the things we're selling anyways, but like it's our job to share it because no one else is going to do it. And like, we do it because we want to, and it's vital, and this is our cause. And it's like, we're desperate for people to understand, and they're not learning it in other places because it's just not out there for them to hear.
Yeah, it's really, really hard. And you know what? I was thinking about this recently, because, you know, like, I met you back in like 2020. That's when I started Clotheshorse. I feel like that's when a lot of us started doing this work, right? I've seen so many people kind of disappear from the movement since then. Yeah. And I no shade on them because I understand it. Yeah. Man, this work is exhausting. It is unpaid. It is like 24 hours a day. People want to fight you on the internet. People want so much of your time. It is very, very exhausting. And there are times when you just feel like, I'm coming up against this huge machine that will not stop moving. And I'm just, you know, it's hard. You're like, as an individual, right? But I also think like, man, we need everybody we can to be having these conversations and telling the people around them so that we can share this work, you know, and reach more people. But it is hard. It is really, really hard.
It's really discouraging. And like,
it is.
Yeah, because I mean, there's like so many sides to it. It's like, you know, in some respects, I'm like, you don't know if you're actually having an impact on anyone. Also, like truly having an impact. Like people that are like close in my lives to me, like my family and friends, like I see them continuing some of their shopping habits. And I'm just like, what have I been like, you know, putting all this energy into if like these people that are closest to me are still have their like Amazon subscriptions. You know what I mean? I know that's such a little trivial thing, but I'm like, it's just exhausting. And like, yeah, at the end of the day, like I don't know why people think like we get paid a lot of money to do what we do. Like we literally are like not making any money. So it's like eventually, like I do get why so many people like, well, I've used this expression so many times with my husband, but like why so many people are quote throwing in the towel because it's funny. Just so you know, if you're a listener and you don't know, Picnicwear does a lot of things made out of vintage towels. So I, over the years, have said to myself many times, like, okay, I'm ready to throw in the towel. So it's a little joke with myself, but anyways, it's really, really freaking hard. And right now, like, I'm telling you guys listening, if you're not a small business owner, listen up. Your small business owner friends are suffering, really, really having a hard time. So if you've ever said like, support small business, like you gotta actually show your support every once in a while. I know it's hard, but like, I am so tired of seeing like small businesses, small shops, like makers, etc., say like, sorry, I can't do it anymore. Like it is so sad to me. I'm sorry. That was a tangent. I didn't mean to go on.
I think it's a good one that people need to hear. Like you know, Tuesday Bassin is closing down her store at the end of the year.
I didn't know that.
I know, it's really sad, right? And I looked at one of her posts about it because also like I follow Tuesday Bassin, but damn if Instagram's ever going to show me one of her posts.
Yeah,
seriously,
that's why I haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen her stuff in forever.
So I heard about it and I went to her, you know, her profile and was looking at the post, and someone said, "Oh, man, I wish I would have known that. I would have bought something from you." Oh my God, guys. Like, show your support. If you don't have the money, fine. Show your support in other ways. And I like, honestly, it's the same thing for Clotheshorse. I had like a total meltdown last month where I was like, I'm ending Clotheshorse at the end of this year. I have since backtracked on that, but I was like, the level of work that comes with this, with like literally no reward sometimes, is really, really hard. Yeah. And I think that people take the work that we all do for granted, unfortunately, sometimes. And reading that comment on Tuesday Baston's post was like, oh, if I would have known that it's really hard to run a small business, I would have bought something. Like, if I would have known you would go out of business, I would have bought something. Like, don't let that happen, everyone. Like, I know it is really hard for all of us out there, but let's do all the things we can to support one another right now and kind of always.
It's also really, really hard to admit that to your following. Like, I'm about to go out of business.
Yeah, I know. Well, because that's not the world we live in.
I don't think you're going to see that often.
No.
Because also, let's be real, like every marketing thing I've ever read, like, basically says that, like, people don't want to buy from you if they think, like, out of pity. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they're not going to want to purchase. So that does more of a disservice, to be totally honest, to, like, announce that. So if there are small businesses that you would, like, hate to see go away, like, you got to show your support.
You got to show up for them. And, you know, there are a lot of ways you can do that, right? But I do think, like, we're totally going off in a major detour here, but I think that we all tend to take for granted that all of these people who inspire us, who educate us, who make us feel part of something are going to be around forever. And we can't assume that. I think, like, 2023 has been a turning point for a lot of people who started doing this work in, like, 2019, 2020, of them being like, I'm burned out. All I do is work and I have nothing to show for it. Yeah. And we're just beginning to see that change and people disappearing. So we gotta all rally together, because otherwise we're just going to keep seeing our friends buying sweaters made out of tires or whatever the heck is going to come next, you know? Like, I think it's amazing that we're having these larger conversations about why clothes suck now, you know? Let's keep having them, you know? Yeah. And getting more and more people in our lives to move away from those companies that sell us all this bad stuff and do bad things for the world. You know, I saw my sister-in-law share her Amazon wish list on Facebook today, and I just got so sad. I was like, man, I can't even reach the people in my near orbit.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard, right? Yeah. And so we all have people in our lives who listen to us, who care about us, who like to hear what we have to say. Say it. Say things. This is the truth about sweaters. This is the truth about this. This is why things are bad now. You deserve better. We deserve better. The planet deserves better. Our kids deserve better. Everyone deserves better. Let's make a change collectively, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's continue talking about sweaters. That's a nice little, like, intermission. All right. So I thought we could talk a little bit. This is something I talked about in my reel about, like, why clothes are not as great right now. And now with both of us here, we have a buyer and a designer. If we had a production person here, we would have the triangle of clothing dilution complete. But, you know, I wanted to talk about kind of where we start in the design sample process and where we end up, like, with what's actually in the stores and on the websites for customers to buy, and how that happens. Because I don't know about you, but I was never like, you know what I would love to do for a living is make really disappointing stuff. Right?
Oh my God. No, I've never said that in my life, but man, did I do it.
Exactly. Inevitably, that is what you do. And it's interesting. I noticed the people who had been, like, that were way higher level than me in buying early in my career, you know, like, they never wore clothes from Urban Outfitters, right? They never even really wore clothes from any of the other sister brands. Like, they bought like, a luxury clothes and stuff. And I was always like, that's so weird. We make so much cute stuff, right? And then I work in it for a couple of years, and I'm like, oh God, everything we make is terrible. It breaks my heart. I will say, like, at Urban, it was never as extreme as it was at Nasty Gal, where we would start with this stunning sample. And by the time we finished, it was like a plastic nightmare. Yeah. But, you know, I thought we'd start with that. So my experience as a buyer is, like, often, you know, we on the buying side, we're doing a bunch of, like, data analysis, and we're kind of coming to the table with design and saying, like, hey, we need this many designs, this many colorways for this period, right? And we might even say, like, specifically, this one needs to be sleeveless, this one needs to be long sleeve, this needs to be turtleneck, right? And we'd give you all the kind of framework for what we need.
Yes.
And that's all based on what we sold last year. Now, one thing you got to remember in any company, but especially in the world of fast fashion, this year's sales have to be higher than last year's, and next year's sales will be higher than this year's. And that's just what you have to hit. And also, everything has to be more profitable than it was last year. So we really lean heavily into like what's performed before. How can we make that again? Get people to buy it who already have it and have it be more profitable while also sprinkling in some new stuff, right? I think that's a pretty good summary of what it is to be a buyer.
I'm like really shocked by how easily you summed that up.
I mean, I've been doing it for a really long time. So then you're the designer, right? You're our sweater designer. What do you do next?
Woof. Oh my God. Okay. So typically we will have references of the things that the buyers loved because they made us lots of money. So we will be very clear on what those items are. We will also be very clear on the dogs, the things that didn't sell.
Yes.
And we will also be very clear on why the buyers felt like they didn't sell. And we might not agree with those reasons. And when I say we, it could be like me and the other designer or whatever. Like, we also don't agree, but like there are so many different variables between these sweaters. So how can you really nail down the reason why one didn't sell and one did sell? And so much of our shopping habit is emotion, you know, like you can't get into the brains of the customers, and most of the time, if you did, they wouldn't even be able to explain why they love the thing. No. It's just yummy. You know?
Yeah, it's like,
it doesn't mean anything.
Our job as buyers is to try to get as close as possible using data. And like for me, always about like observation, going out and watching people interact in the stores. You know, like the thing is, especially if you work for a company that has stores in addition to a website, there's what sells or doesn't sell sometimes is a little bit of a roll of the dice, because if the corporate merchandising team doesn't give the direction that that style should be like focal or used on mannequins or have a good spot in general, it could be jammed back in the corner. And no matter how much you and I love it, it's not going to sell because no one's going to see it. And so that's the other thing. When you're a buyer, you're kind of like, why didn't this sell? Because you're going to be asked a million times why it didn't sell and what you learned from it. And so you have to come up with some sort of excuse. Yeah, but it's hard
because you're like basically your career is contingent on things selling. And so, you know, you kind of really have to know how to talk and explain and understand. And even if you don't understand, you have to sound like you do.
You do, because no one's here's the thing. You can't ever say, like, I remember being in a meeting where there had been just this epic East Coast blizzard and like the whole last week, the East Coast had been like, everyone was snowed in, right? So stores were technically open because our company was like evil overlord in that way and expected people to come into work, but no one actually went shopping because they were snowed in. And so our sales were terrible. Now, any person would say, well, your sales were terrible because of the blizzard. But instead, we had to be like, well, we think sales are slow because of, you know, we didn't have enough long sleeve turtlenecks in the store yet, but they're on their way. Like that's, you could never use weather as an excuse, the economy, nothing like that. So you have to you have to come up with a reason.
Someone always has to be to blame.
Right. And when you're a buyer, like literally if sales aren't good, you are to blame. Someone was asking me like, hey, why did you get yelled at so much at your last job? Like, were you missing something? What was going on? And I was like, because sales were bad. Yeah. And it was like completely out of my control, but it was my responsibility.
And you also, I have to say, you also can't say like, even if you have a wonderful memory for meetings and interactions, you can't be like, oh, well, the GMM said that we should change the yarn to this yarn and it made it really shitty. Like, you can't say that.
You can't say that.
Even though that's the truth.
I mean, this thing I cite all the time as, you know, like when you're in a buying interview, it's always like, what's the biggest mistake you made in your career and what did you learn from it? And I always have the same story, which is when my GM made me buy 10,000 straw fedoras, even though I said, listen, that was a thing last year. It was great. We made a lot of money. The tide has turned on fedoras. It's embarrassing to wear a fedora now. There are memes. Do you want me to explain what a meme is? Like, that's how I felt when I was talking to him. There are memes on Tumblr about fedoras. We cannot sell fedoras anymore. And he was like, if you don't go back to your desk right now and write a PO for 10,000 straw fedoras, you can consider your job done.
Wow.
And so I went back to my desk and I wrote a PO for 10,000 straw fedoras. And guess what? They never sold at all. Not at 25% off, not at 50% off, not at 75% off. We literally had to job them out and like donate them. And all season long, why are hats missing their sales? Why are hats missing their sales? Well, the GM said I had to write 10,000 units of straw fedoras.
Yeah.
I had to cancel everything else that was on. I was planning to order, and that's all we have, and no one wants them. No, I can't say that.
Such a common scenario.
Such a common scenario. And then, I mean, this was still pretty early in my career, so I hadn't learned that like you cannot win, right? In my performance review, I said I feel really frustrated because I'm not being allowed to make decisions on my own, but then I'm accountable for the decisions that other people are making. And I cited the straw fedoras thing. And my boss was like, I think you should look somewhere else for a job. And so I did. But yeah, I mean, like that was like really happened. You know, I didn't get my bonus. I got yelled at for like 6 months straight.
The way you summed that up though, like I never really thought about it that way, but that's exactly how I felt in my career too. But like kudos to you for like having the foresight to like put that into words despite how it was received. Like that perfectly encapsulates how I felt so much of my career.
Oh my God, totally. And I will tell you that once again, like I was saying earlier, like we don't sit in these meetings and we're like, what's the crappiest thing we could make? Like we're like so excited. But unfortunately, so many of these decisions are out of our hands that like we bear the responsibility of them, but like we knew it was a bad idea to begin with. You know, we had no choice. And I know design, I mean, like even when I was a buyer, an executive would walk by and put a tear from a magazine on my desk and be like, make this. And I would be like, I think it's a bad idea. You know, it's so similar in design. And because then you're also, depending on who your buyer is, you're dealing with that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you basically the past little conversation we just had just described the design process, basically. So if any of you are wondering what it's like to be a designer, like Amanda, you just described it. Because I was like, how do I summarize what the design process is like? And that's pretty much it. If that didn't make any sense to you, then perfect, you get it.
Yeah, pretty much. Good summary. It's just really weird.
Yeah, it's just like everything's out of order. Nobody makes sense. You state your opinion and you're really confident about it and you back up with tears and with stats and you explain. But then someone says no because somebody walked into the room wearing something from Zara and it was really cute. And why don't we have that on the wall? And so here's our collection now.
Okay,
that's being bought.
So that's a great call out. So basically the next step is like sample review. Well, like maybe sketch review, depending on where you're working, where you would sit down with your sketch ideas and show them to your buyer and you'd talk it through. Yeah. But then next is like the samples are on the wall. And I was telling you that over my career, I found more and more when I would go to these sample reviews that over time, all the samples on the wall weren't even samples that we'd made yet. They were things that someone had bought somewhere else that we were going to copy. And the last sample review I did before the pandemic for sweaters, every single thing on the grid, which I was like, oh, these are all so cute. And someone sat next to me and like, don't get attached to them. Those are bought samples. And I was like, oh.
They're going to look nothing like that.
Nothing like that. Because that's the other thing. So you're going to get pressed to copy more and more stuff. That it'll be like, here's this $500 sweater. It's like Marc Jacobs. It's fully cashmere. It's like hand knit by like a person. Yeah, we want that, but we need it to be $58 retail. Yeah. Retail. Right. And so you get into this quandary where you're like being expected to create these things that are not feasible.
Yeah. And then in many cases, you're at the same time as being told, copy this directly, but make it like 300% cheaper. You're also having, maybe this is just one of my jobs, but this was like definitely a common thread. You're also going to have to attend meetings where you talk about how we can't copy things and we need to make sure, like, have you ever heard the bus stop blink test or something, like two people at a bus stop. Like, if you blinked your eyes, would you be able to tell that they were wearing the same sweater or something? I don't even freaking remember.
Something like that.
It made no sense.
It made no sense,
but like, yeah, but like, so you're being asked to like take these classes and commit to not copying things, and then somebody's putting a tear on your desk and saying like, we need to make this exactly, and you're like, what exactly? You mean like inspired by? No, exactly.
Right. Or you're like, GM just went to Europe and came back with like $10,000 worth of things he bought,
like from Givenchy.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff,
and he's like, make these. Right. This was like, this has happened everywhere I worked. It was so egregious at Nasty Gal.
Yeah.
Like someone,
sense.
It would be like, here's this $10,000 Givenchy jacket that we rented. We can't even afford to buy the sample. Let's make a like $200 version of that. Oh, that seems like that's going to go well. And it's the same thing would happen in sweaters everywhere I worked. And once again, like you go into the meeting, the whole wall is stuff you're supposed to copy. And at the meantime, even as a buyer, like I was telling you back when Urban was like, there was this blog called Urban Counterfeiters, which I don't think exists anymore, but it was basically like
I remember
where they would show stuff that Urban had copied. They made us all sign an agreement saying that if we were ever even suspected, like something that we had bought was suspected to be a copy, we would immediately be terminated. Without conversation.
Just so crazy.
Right. But then at the same time, 5 minutes, you sign the agreement, 5 minutes later, your boss walks by and puts a tear on your desk of something they want you to copy or something they bought in LA or whatever. And so you're like, what am I supposed to do here? Right. And then, so, we have sample review. We're like, oh, we're going to buy all these things. Of course, we can't afford any of them, but we're going to put in prices for them and plan it. Right. So then the samples come back. And this is usually like, the first pass in my experience is production has tried really, really hard to stick to the vibe of the original garment. But at the same time, like design is there like, hey, I made these things to make them different, right? Because we're all trying to be ethical people here.
Yes.
And so they're hanging on the wall. And two things happen in that meeting. One, the DM or the GM are like, I liked it when it looked like the original better. And you're like, yeah, well, we can't buy that because then we would be getting sued. Yeah, but the original was better. Okay, well, then maybe we shouldn't do this style. Can't you just make it look more like the original? So that's one thing that happens, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe everybody's like, these all look amazing. I can't believe we pulled it off. We copied all these things and no one will ever know. And then production's like, yeah, but the thing—
here are your prices.
Right. The thing about that sweater is in order to hit your margin target, it's going to have to be $300. And you're like, okay, cool. It needs to be $68 because that's what the bestseller was last year. So what do we do there? And this is when it starts, right? We're like, okay, we're going to sub out the yarn.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, yes.
First thing.
This is the juice of it.
Right.
So, and this is where, I can't remember if you already mentioned this, but like where like the conversation of like what the content of the yarn is kind of not really important. It's more so just like, what does it feel like
and
when
look
you touch
like,
it?
And look like, right?
And look like, yes, and look like.
Yeah.
And, but however, what layers into that with sweaters specifically, I mean, I'm sure with other garments, but like my experience was in sweaters, is the duty rates. So like, even if on its face, like you're looking at like 3 different yarn cards and one of them is like, let's say it's like good, better, best. So like cheap, like you've got one that's like super cheap, one that's medium, and one that's expensive, let's say. It doesn't necessarily mean that like whatever like the garment you make out of the first one is going to be the cheapest, because there's so many factors that layer into it. And like I was saying, one of them is duties. So I don't know if this has changed a lot in the past few years, but something that had like over 50% cotton would have a lower duty rate when it was imported into the US than something that was like over 50% synthetic. And there are also different rates for like over 25% wool or something like that. So it's like not very cut and dry when you look at things. And then on top of that, one distinct difference between sweaters or knitted garments in general and cut and sewn garments, whether they're woven or cut and sewn knit, is that with sweaters, with knitted garments, you are paying for yarn and literally creating the fabric. So with cut and sew garments, you have a roll of fabric, you're laying it out and stacking the fabric layer over layer, and you're cutting your pattern pieces out of the fabrics. But with a sweater, as long as it's fully fashioned. Of course, there's cut and sew sweaters as well. You're knitting the yarn into the fabric, into the shape of the pattern pieces. So that's one distinct difference. And you have a lot of control over what that fabric looks like. So you are using one yarn, but there's so many things you can do with that yarn, which is the exact reason why I love sweaters so much. It's so much fun, but we're not getting into that right now. But what I will say is like one of the big things you have control over that can result in like different price sweaters is tension. So like how tightly you knit or how loosely you knit. And this is actually a really good place to bring it back to that photo of the Billy Crystal and the other fellow. Was that on the left, like I look at Billy Crystal sweater and it's like pretty loosely knit. So it's pretty lofty. It comes out feeling very like soft and like lofty is like kind of the best word I can use to describe it. Whereas the Ralph Lauren sweater on the right is like tightly knit, which means that it's a hell of a lot heavier, but it is much, much more expensive as a result of being heavier. It takes longer to knit. So it's the yarn itself is more expensive because you've got more of it, but it's also, a lot longer of a process to knit. And of course, like the knitting time, will play into like the cost of the garment because the longer it takes to knit, the more expensive it is. So, and then to add on to that as well, how you knit that yarn will also play into the pilling of it. So something like that feels really nice, like you see it, dare I say, hanging, 'cause we don't like sweaters hanging.
Interestingly, though, we hang them constantly in the office. I know.
Exactly. So you see a sweater hanging in a store and you feel it and it feels like light and lofty and you put it on and you feel like you're wearing a cloud. Well, that lightness is actually part of what's going to cause the pilling as well, because like I said about fibers and how they rub up against each other, if they're very loose, there's lots of space to move if the tension is loose. So that can create more pilling as well. So, but all these things, like at the point in conversation that we're talking and we're finding, oh, like this sweater's gorgeous, but it's really, really expensive. Oh my gosh, it's like this many kilos of yarn per dozen. Like, how do we make it weigh less? Oh, well, we can loosen the tension. So, you're loosening the tension, which, can be for cost. It can also be for hand feel. But that's one of the things you can do to lower the price.
And you can change up the yarn. So like, we're not sitting in the meeting saying like, oh, can you add 5% more nylon to it or something to bring down the price? But certainly the production people are going back to the factory and saying like, hey, can we lighten this up? Right. And so probably, they're going to add more nylon. And, I always say that like some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in fashion are the production people, the production managers, coordinators, et cetera, because they're the ones who really are like pulling out all kinds of charts and figuring it out and saying like, okay, well, if we reduce the cotton content in this and replace it with nylon or poly, the price of the yarn will change to this, but then the duty will go up to this. And they're like exploring all the other options. And so it's like not unusual to have, as a buyer, the production person come by your desk with like a piece of paper with all these different yarns taped on them and be like, which one do you like the best? And then you pick one and you hope it's the right one. And they're like, okay, good. That one's the cheapest. It has the lowest duties, the lowest cost, what have you. Right. And they're like, they're taking all this data and working with the factory to like figure out where they can hit. But that is like number one. And in any other garment that's not a sweater, it always starts with like, we're going to change up the fabric, right? Like we got to figure it out. And then if you're still not there, which in a lot of cases when you're going into a meeting and literally every sample in the wall is a bought item that is way more expensive than your price point is, you're not going to solve it all just by swapping out the yarn or the tension, right? So then it's like, let's crop it. Let's take off the sleeves. Let's take off the details. Let's do this. Let's do that.
Yes. When we were talking before, I hadn't even thought about it until this point. But you were talking about cropping sweaters, and I was like, wait a second. Is that why sweater vests are in style right now?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Seriously, like, did somebody go like, oh, if we cut off the sleeves, we can hit the margins we need? And like talk about like trend episode. Like, that's it. That's where your trend started. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's why like it started that way.
Oh, for sure. I was saying to you that like all these years of swimming in this stew of pricing and data and all that, I often wonder, like, do the trends start with the people, or do they start in the buying offices with what we can afford, right? Because I have seen us play into that. Like I was telling you, like at Nasty Gal, we were like, sheer dressing is sort of a thing. The Kardashians are doing it. Let's just make everything sheer. Yeah. And then we can afford to do anything else we want because we're not putting a lining in. Like, it cuts so much cost, right? And I've seen that with crop tops. I've seen that with sleeveless things, mini dresses. I mean, there are so many trends that are so cheap to make, but have like a high perceived value to the customer. Like I was telling you early in my career when I was managing scarves and hats, chunky knits became a thing, like lofty, huge yarn, huge stitches, right? Very lightweight despite these huge stitches. And that was because it was the loftiest yarn. It was practically a cloud. And I would develop a scarf that was seriously like 20 feet long and 2 feet wide of this extra chunky, lofty yarn. And the pricing would come in at like $3. But it looked expensive. There's that term. And I could sell it for $50.
I talked about this with you earlier. That's what's really interesting is like a lot of that is to do with like the knitting speed as well, because like, okay, here's an example. Say you have a very fine gauge sweater. So it's like really like you look at the stitches and they're really, really tiny, right? Okay. So that's a fine gauge sweater. And then you look at like a chunky sweater, like a cable knit sweater or something, like an Irish sweater, which traditionally are hand knit. So not exactly the same, but imagine that those were both knit on a machine. You knit one row of stitching on the chunky, and you have like 3/4 of an inch, right, of fabric. You've created 3/4 of an inch of fabric. You knit one row of stitching on the 12 gauge machine, and you have 1/8 of an inch, right? So you have to knit many more back and forth courses to get the same amount of fabric as you did with the chunky. So the knitting speed, even though the yarn is like finer and it utilizes less fiber per like inch of yarn, whatever, your knitting speed is so much slower on the 12 gauge versus the chunky. Obviously there's so many other factors within that, what makes it slower fast. But that kind of summarizes why for that scarf, it was so cheap, because they probably like busted those out so fast and they were using like a cheap acrylic roving yarn or something. So yeah, that's another reason why you can't really like, it's so hard to discern quality. And I understand why people are challenged by it, because it's like, think about how many years you and I have been working in this field, and we're continuing to gain knowledge.
Absolutely. A couple years ago, I saw all these blankets at Target. They were like massive, and they were huge stitches with very lofty yarn. Like, let's say the whole width of the blanket was like 40 stitches, like that kind of thing. And all I could see when I was looking at them, I mean, like they were marked at a pretty high price that no way it cost. This must have been like a 95% markup or something crazy. Yeah. And all I could think about is like that blanket in a couple weeks is it's probably not going to get pilly. What's going to happen is it's going to start compressing itself and feel plasticky, which is what it is. Yeah. Right? It sort of loses its loft.
Or also snagging too. Like when things are loosely knit, when there's like large spaces between the stitches, like it can catch on something. And create holes or pulls, and so those are other reasons why those sweaters are, quote, garbage.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's so disheartening to think about all those meetings I've been in my career where we have started with something that seemed like a really great idea. And by the time it hits the stores, it's completely different, and it happens in all categories. Like, we might be like, oh, we love this jumpsuit, but we can't afford the make. It's too much sewing to make it as a jumpsuit. So let's turn it into a dress, or in sweaters, it would be like, okay, we cannot get this. Am I thinking of the right term here? It would be like fully fashioned or something when it's fully knit by the machine, right? Fully fashioned.
And well, like I was saying earlier, like it's knit into the shape of the pattern pieces versus just being knit into like fabric yardage.
Right. So we would say we cannot afford this as a fully fashioned knit. Let's move it into cut and sew, which is like a fabric that is like sweater knit. I always love that word swit. We would often move like stuff into swit, which is substantially cheaper. And it is literally this like knit fabric that is cut and sewn together. But that stuff is even lower quality in my experience. Like snaggeroo, right?
Yeah, snaggerific for sure.
Yeah, and just like fully polyester at that point. But much less expensive. And as a customer, you would have no idea that it wasn't knit in the same way, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I have seen so much product hit the stores that was so far abstracted from what we wanted, where we started. And here's the thing. If that style sells really well this year, then next year, I, the buyer, am going to be the meeting and I'm going to say, Dani, we need to bring this back or update it. But we also need it to be $1 cheaper this year. And so then here we go again. We're going to water down the idea, Yeah,
and we have to make it look different enough that the same customer wants to buy it again, but not be so different that it's like a different item.
What a good time. It just brings me back because, you'd be sitting in a meeting and you'd be like, okay, well, this is like a basic button-up cardigan. It's nice. Like, how do we make that different?
It's got like an armhole and it has no buttons. It's so basic. Do we change it to a raglan?
Yeah, exactly.
But the customer doesn't really know the difference between a set and sleeve and a raglan. They're not going to see that difference. No. Okay. Do we add buttons? Oof, no, because buttons is going to cost.
It's going to cost more.
Okay.
We got to bring down.
Do we make it shorter? No. That's a different sweater.
Let's make it a Henley. We did so many Henleys for a while because it's like, it's like cheaper than a cardigan because there's less buttons.
But it has that like detail that makes it look expensive.
So many Henleys. Yeah. So this is just like what happens. And you do this for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And suddenly the sweaters that you get to buy are extra crappy because they are like a dilution of like just for years, right?
Yeah.
They're so far from where they began. And that's where we are right now. But here's the thing. That wouldn't continue if people weren't buying them. And I think like that's the thing is like we don't know what we don't know as consumers when we're out there looking for a sweater. And I hope that this is starting to like open some eyes, us talking about this. If you're enjoying this episode, then this is a great time to remind you that my work here at Clotheshorse is made possible by the support of listeners like you, just like NPR, and these great small businesses. Please go give them your support. Blank Cass, or Blanket Coats by Cass, is focused on restoring, renewing, and reviving the history held within vintage and heirloom textiles. By embodying the love, craft, and energy that is original to each vintage textile as I transfer it into a new garment, I hope we can reteach ourselves to care for and mend what we have and make it last. Blank Cass lives on Instagram at @blank_Cass, and a website will be launched soon at blankcass.com. Located in Whistler, Canada, Velvet Underground is a velvet jungle full of vintage and secondhand clothing, plants, a vegan cafe, and lots of rad products from other small sustainable businesses. Our mission is to create a brand and community dedicated to promoting self-expression, as well as educating and inspiring a more sustainable and conscious lifestyle, both for the people and the planet. Find us on Instagram at shop_velvetunderground or online at www.shopvelvetunderground.com. St. Evens is a New York City-based vintage shop that is dedicated to bringing you those special pieces you'll reach for again and again. More than just a store, St. Evens is dedicated to sharing the stories and history behind the garments. 10% of all sales are donated to a different charitable organization each month. New vintage is released every Thursday at wearstevens.com with previews of new pieces and more brought to you on Instagram at wear_st.evens. That's Wear St. Evens. Country Feedback is a mom and pop record shop in Tarboro, North Carolina. They specialize in used rock, country, and soul and offer affordable vintage clothing and housewares. Do you have used records you want to sell? Country Feedback wants to buy them. Find us on Instagram at Country Feedback Vintage and Vinyl, or head down east and visit our brick and mortar. All are welcome at this inclusive and family-friendly record shop in the country. Republica Unicornia Yarns. Handmade yarn and notions for the color obsessed. Made with love and some swearing in fabulous Atlanta, Georgia by head yarn wench Kathleen. Get ready for rainbows with a side of giving a damn. Republica Unicornia is all about making your own magic using small batch, responsibly sourced, hand-dyed yarns and thoughtfully made notions. Slow fashion all the way down and discover the joy of creating your very own beautiful hand-knit, crocheted, or woven pieces. Find us on Instagram at Republica_Unicornia_yarns and at www.republicaunicornia.com. Picnicwear, a slow fashion brand ethically made by hand from vintage and dead stock materials, most notably vintage towels. Founder Dani has worked in the industry as a fashion designer for over 10 years, but started Picnicwear in response to her dissatisfaction with the industry's shortcomings. Picnicwear recently moved to rural North Carolina, where all their sewing and accessories are now designed and cut, but the majority of their sewing is done by skilled garment workers in New York City. Their customers take comfort in knowing that all their sewists are paid well above New York City minimum wage. Picnicwear offers minimal waste and maximum authenticity. Future vintage over future garbage. Cute Little Ruin is an online shop dedicated to providing quality vintage and secondhand clothing, vinyl, and home items in a wide range of styles and price points. If it's ethical and legal, we try to find a home for it. Vintage style with progressive values. Find us on Instagram at Cute Little Ruin. Is there a little bit of Italy in your soul? Are you an enthusiast of pre-loved decor and accessories? Bring vintage Italian style and history into your space with the Pewter Thimble. We source useful and beautiful things and mend them where needed. We also find gorgeous illustrations and make them print-worthy. Tarot cards, tea towels, and hand-picked treasures available to you from the comfort of your own home. Responsibly sourced from across Rome, lovingly renewed by fairly paid artists and artisans, with something for every budget. Discover more at thepewterthimble.com. Deco Denim is a startup based out of San Francisco, and it sells clothing and accessories that are sustainable, gender fluid, size inclusive, and high quality, made to last for years to come. Deco Denim is trying to change the way you think about buying clothes. Founder Sarah Mattis wants to empower people to ask important questions like, where was this made? Was this garment made ethically? Is this fabric made of plastic? Can this garment be upcycled? And if not, can it be recycled? Sign up at decodenim.com to receive $20 off your first purchase. They promise not to spam you and send out no more than 3 emails a month, with 2 of them surrounding education or a personal note from the founder. Again, that's decodenim.com. .com.
「」 .
So I thought, Dani, like we could talk about how we could not buy crappy sweaters. Like, what should we look out for?
I think that where this starts, like anything, is education. So obviously, like what we've just talked about is hopefully helping you, like helping demystify things a little bit. But I also think that there's like something to just looking at garments and turning things inside out and questioning things yourself. And like, I always say this, when you have something in your closet that's been there for years and years and years and you continue to wear it and you continue to love it, like question why. What is it about it? Is it the aesthetic? Is it like, you know, has it like held up really well? Turn it inside out. Look at the seams. How is it made? Like, you don't have to be a fashion designer to be interested in how things like garments are made. And I think that that's kind of one thing over time. Like some of my most like memorable moments, like at FIT, for example, was when we got to go to the FIT museum and they showed us garments, like beautifully made garments, and just like seeing how things were made and like what makes a well-made garment well-made is something that you can just learn on your own by like going to vintage stores, thrift stores. Go to an expensive store and you might see things in there and you're like, holy crap. Like the video you were referring to earlier, like they pulled out a Rami Brooke dress or whatever and we're looking at it in detail and they're like, how is this any different than something at Zara? But yet it's $400, you know, like those are things that like you should just always be questioning and looking at. You know, it's hard because even in a thrift store, there's so much to see. So we're all just like flipping through so fast. But if something catches your eye and you stop on it, and maybe it's not something you want to wear, it's not your size, but you're like, why am I responding to this? Why is this so beautiful? Like, think about it. Like, how were the seams made? Like, how is it finished inside? Like, what are the things that to you make it feel good quality? Like, break it down yourself. You can do it. I believe in you. So that's my number one thing is like, because like, you know, I think you mentioned this before, like price is not a deciding factor on whether something's good quality or not.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have some examples that I found on the internet for us because I do think, and I get it, I see this being repeated all the time online, and I know that like we've had it kind of drilled into us from a young age. The idea out there, the thinking is that if it's a higher price, it must be better quality. And sure, I think that there were times where that was true. That is definitely not the case in this century.
No.
And, you know, like we see $5,000 designer dresses from luxury brands that are 100% polyester. Like it's just a different time, right? And so we kind of have to be detectives when we buy something. So I pulled a couple examples from the internet. I was like, I'm going to go out and look for sweaters that are over $100 and kind of see what I'm getting, like what's out there for us. And the theme was the same over and over again. So the first sweater we have here is from Free People. It's called the Fireside Tunic. It is $168, and I can tell you, it's a really cute sweater with like an intarsia pattern.
It is.
It's like long.
The silhouette's really cute.
Yeah, it's really cute, right? And I bet that yarn is so yummy.
Oh my God, it is so yummy. I can tell looking at it.
I can tell too. Yeah, and you look at this and you're like, oh, this is obviously a really nice, high quality sweater. It's $168. It's super cute, looks yums, whatever. Here's the thing. On the Free People website, and on most websites, but not all, you can see the fiber content. Now, IRL, if you were shopping in the store, I would urge you to look inside the garment. It might be by the lower hem, but it is required by law here in the United States that any clothing that is imported into this country for sale, which at Free People or just about any other retailer right now, the vast majority, if not all of the clothing is imported into the United States, right? It's made overseas. It is required by law that the tag inside the garment must show where it was made and what kind of fibers are used. If you're shopping and you don't see that, obviously thrifting is different. I cut a lot of tags out. I have Sensi skin, okay? But like if you are in a store buying something brand new and that tag is not there, this that brand is up to some next level of fucking around. I don't even know what to say, right? Next level of shenanigans. Like they're up to something. Because that's illegal. So IRL, you always want to be looking for that tag. And I sometimes look for it before I even start like feeling around because I don't want to get caught up in the emotion of it. But if you're shopping online, which a lot of us do, you should be able to go into like product details, product description, and figure out what the fiber is. If it's not there, then you need to email them. But I will tell you, if they're not telling you, it's definitely not a good story.
I also found from doing the same sort of research myself, sometimes it's really hard to find. That's purposeful. They make it such that it's hard to find the information about a garment. Like they want you to just buy it based on the pictures and the
totally.
price.
And most people do, right? Read that stuff. It's there for a reason. Like I said, not all retailers are doing that the way they should be, but it's there. The other thing that you called out, which I think is really important too, Dani, is what brands are saying in terms of country of origin. What did you find quite often? Yeah, so I was finding specifically on the Free People website, I can't remember where else, but it was basically just saying imported. It wasn't clarifying where it was imported from, which is like, it's really pretty shady, to be honest, because like if you think about it, like it's just messed up because like the word imported sounds fancy. Let's be real. It sounds fancy. Oh, this is imported. But if it said made in China or made in Bangladesh, would it sound as fancy to you? Right. And my guess is this particular sweater that we're looking at right now is probably made in China based on the fabric composition, the pricing. I'm like, this is the wheelhouse of China. So for sure, the fiber content here on this $168 sweater, you look at it, you're like, oh, it's cozy, it's soft, it's cute. It's probably like wool, cashmere, that kind of thing. You're like, it's got to be a natural fiber because it's so yummy, right? 19% polyamide, which is like a plastic fiber, 9% polyester, another plastic fiber, 1% elastane, that's for a little bit of stretch, also a plastic fiber, 45% cotton, okay, there's our natural fiber, 26% acrylic. So it is mostly plastic, right? And probably it is 45% cotton solely to game the duty, is my guess. Yeah, I was just going to say that. I can't remember if it was like, it has to be over 50% or whatever, but sometimes like the cheapness of the yarn overrides those high synthetic duties anyways. So if the yarn is like so cheap on its own, then they can afford the duties because it still makes it cheaper than if they use like a cheap cotton yarn or something like that. Totally. So the next one, this is something that really grinds my gears. And I see it all the time. This is from And Other Stories, which I think people consider to be like a more high-end brand as well, like Free People. It's actually owned by H&M, and all their stuff is made in the same factories as H&M stuff. It's like the same supply chain. This sweater says, knitted sweater, responsible alpaca, responsible wool. It's got like sort of three-dimensional dots all over it. It is $129. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's responsible alpaca and wool. Okay, this is great. Tell me more. Maybe I finally have found my sweater that is fully natural fibers. Composition, polyamide, 33%. Wool, 32%. Alpaca, 32%. Spandex, 3%. So it is, once again, the most synthetic fibers are taking up a big part of this fiber content, but it's not it's sold to you as an alpaca and wool sweater. But also, like, what the fuck does responsible mean? Such greenwashing, right? Like, tell me what responsible means, because, like, I'm responsible for doing the dishes in my house. Like, that doesn't make me, like, good at doing dishes or something, or, like, do them properly, or, like, doesn't mean that I actually do them every day like I should. Like, responsible, like, means nothing. Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Actually, the way the choices of words in greenwashing and, like, ethical washing campaigns really flip a little switch in our brain. They have evolved. Yeah, but they've evolved so much. They have. They can't say sustainable because people are being like, I don't know, it sounds boring. Yeah. But if you say something like responsible or conscious or ethical or anything like that, it gives the customer, it like sort of unlocks this little part of their imagination that says that if I buy this, I am a responsible person. There's something about human nature where we kind of like, one, we want to feel superior. Okay. And, we actually have to do a lot of work to like undo that, right? In our day-to-day lives. But we want to say, oh, I'm not like all those other irresponsible people out there. I bought this responsible sweater because I care, right? Same thing, like I'm more conscious, like that kind of stuff. I really feel there is so much like, I don't know, superiority that can be a part of the sustainable and slow fashion community that I work very hard to dismantle. I don't like it. But these brands play into that because they know human nature.
Yeah, they're taking advantage of you.
Yeah, they are. They're manipulating you.
Yes.
Okay, so the next sweater, this one's from Madewell, and it kind of reminded me of the Billy Crystal sweater, so I was like, okay, let's take a look here.
That's so true.
Okay, so this one is actually, I think, no, the Free People one was our most expensive one so far. This is our second most. It's $148, cable knit, oversized sweater. Now, first I'm going to read the copy and that came with it. There was a lot more copy, right? I'm just going to read you one sentence from it, but then I'll tell you the content.
I hate this already. I can see it.
Made of textural slub yarn. First off, what customer even knows what that means? That's some flim-flammery. You and I know what that means, but a customer's like, I don't know, it sounds fancy. Made of textural slub yarn blended with responsible wool fibers.
Okay, hold on. We need to clarify. It doesn't just say responsible.
You're right. It's in, is in parentheses. Thank you. I was like, what are those things called? So it's responsible wool fibers. Ostensibly, I don't know. I was looking at their site, and sometimes that can mean it's a recycled fiber, but sometimes it can mean that is like more like ethically sourced or something. It's interesting that Madewell and other stories are basically using the same word. Right? So responsible trending, everyone. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Responsible full fibers. It has a crew neck, an oversized fit, and drop shoulders. First of all, I don't even think the average customer knows what a drop shoulder is either.
No.
Anyway, so you're like, hear this, and you're like, oh, so this is like a sustainable, ethical sweater. It's responsible. And it's wool. It's 75% polyacrylic, 25% wool. It's not a wool sweater. So I was telling you when you and I were prepping for this, like on food labeling, it is the law that the first ingredient is what there's the most of in that food. And the last one is what there's the least amount. And in some of these, I have seen companies leading with the fancy fiber.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I thought that was illegal.
I know. It's just so, I don't know, there's sketchiness going on across the internet.
Yeah.
So the last one I called out is this brand Cezanne, which has been coming up a lot in conversations about like sustainable, ethical brands. It sort of positions itself as like sustainable luxury, and it's French. And I found a cardigan on their site. Now, I will tell you, they did have some stuff on their site that was fully natural fibers, right? It was a pretty good mix. So this could be an option for you. If you're looking for natural fibers, just read the content. Because this sweater didn't look any different than the other sweater that was next to it. And that sweater was 100% cashmere. This one, the Angelique cardigan, is $150. And oh my gosh, I made this way too small. I have to zoom in so I can read this. It is 33% mohair, 33% wool, then something percent polyamide, and then that elastane. It's like in all the sweaters now.
Yeah, I can explain that. That's typically in the cuffs.
Ah, okay.
So in the first few courses of the cuffs and maybe the ribs of the hem too, so that it stays cinched together and like it prevents it from over time stretching out.
Interesting. Okay, so it's like a pretty good mix of synthetic and natural fibers, but I mean it's got a lot of polyamide in it. Like it's not going to decompose, is what I'm saying. And the other thing that's important to call out is, I'm sure you noticed, I'm throwing around all kinds of percentages in all these blends, even though a lot of them have the same assortment of fibers in them. And that renders them basically unrecyclable because there's
I was just going to say that.
There's like too many blends. And I don't know how you separate them anyway.
It's funny you say that because, I've been doing like a workshop on circularity. If you're interested in having me speak, contact me. But so that is a big thing that's being like talked about within circularity is mono materials versus multi materials. And so, all the sweaters you listed are multi-materials. So like end of life cycle for these is basically the garbage, because it's very, very difficult to recycle a blended material. But I actually met someone here in Danville, Virginia, who has a company called Cirque, and there's a few companies who are emerging who are actually like pioneering technology where they can separate the fibers, which is pretty freaking cool. But that's a whole other thing. But right now, like that for the most part, most of these things are just like, there's just no way to properly recycle them.
Yeah. It's just like a dead end, basically, you know?
Yeah.
I guess my question for you, Dani, is like, we know how this industry could be better, right? But like, how for customers, like, if you come up on this and you've read all these content things like we just did, what do you do? Like, what do you do next?
Well, I mean, it depends. Are you like, do you need to buy a sweater?
I mean, that's the number one question, because I kind of wonder, right? Do you, like, there were times when I would be managing sweaters at work, and I would be like, why do we keep selling so many sweaters every year? How many sweaters do these people have?
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, like, I think I said this in like our first recording together, but like one of the like moments in my career where I was like, wow, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, to be a part of this, was like when I had a very quote unquote successful moment in my career and I got a huge order placed against a style that I designed. And we're talking like, I mean, this was actually our units were smaller when I was at Urban than they were later at Express, but it was like 40,000 units or something. It was like my biggest order at that point. And I was like, 40,000 units?
Like 40, that is like, makes me squeeze my knees together in horror, you know?
Like 40,000 people. Yeah. I mean, obviously, a caveat to that is that, like, were we expecting to actually sell 40,000 units, or were we buying 40,000 because it gave us a reduced price? Like, there's so many layers to that. But still, 40,000 were being produced. We're hoping that 40,000 people buy them. And that's one single sweater out of our entire assortment.
Yeah.
Why do you need so many gosh darn sweaters? Like, I like buy one sweater every couple of years, maybe more if I'm like buying it at a vintage or something like that. But like, I am a sweater designer and I am so passionate about knitwear. And a good example is like when I moved to New York and I like, you know, my salary got vastly increased and I was like, I've never felt like I had the opportunity to like, to buy a nice piece of clothing for myself. When in reality, I always actually like did have the money. I was just like squandering it by buying things 40% off at Urban Outfitters whenever we got the discount. Like for real, like even though like I didn't have a high salary, I could have just bought like 90% less than I already was and got like some really nice quality garments.
The money I would spend during employee appreciation, which is when we got 40% off of everything, including sale.
Yeah.
Shameful.
Yeah. I know. And so when I moved back to New York, I was like, they gave me a sign-on bonus and I was like, I'm going to buy myself a really nice sweater that I'm going to like wear for years to come. And guess what? That was 2015. It's 2023. And I wore that sweater yesterday because it's one of my favorite sweaters. And it's, you know, one of the buttons fell off and I have to find a new button to replace it with. And it's a little bit pilly, but like it's still delicious and I love it. And that was like a big learning experience for me in how I shopped because I had that for years and I still love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question to ask yourself. Do I really need a sweater? And how many sweaters do I need? And really consolidating that spending into a couple really key pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. And always asking the question to yourself that I am constantly saying, like, is this future vintage or future garbage? And somebody asked me in an interview recently, like, how do you decipher the difference between like an item that's trendy or an item that's just, like, I can't remember how they put it, just like really special and like, exciting. And like, only you can decide that. That is only for you to decide, because if something is trendy now, but you freaking love it and you're going to wear it 5 years from now, then you're not like subscribing to the trend. You saw something that you liked and you bought it, you know? But if you're going to only like it for a season and next year you're not going to wear it again, then yeah, it's probably a trend that you should dismiss. But like, some of my favorite items in my closet I have had for decades, and I still look at them and I get excited and I get butterflies. So I think like personal style and knowing what really excites you and looking at your closet and thinking like, what are things that have been in here for a while and why is like the best way that you can approach shopping. And if somebody like shares something, a small business or something, and you like freaking love it, and like a week later you still love it, and like months later you still love it, like that's probably a good sign that it's something that like you'll love for many years and will end up being like future vintage hanging in your closet, or folded in your closet. Sorry.
Don't hang it. We don't like that. It gives you your own weird drop shoulder, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that's really great advice. And I think it's also a good transition into talking about your sweater collection, Dani, because we've talked for like 2 hours now about why and how sweaters have been sort of, this is a term people use to describe apps, and I really like it, how they've been in-shitified, you know?
Oh, I've never heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the in-shitification of Instagram, et cetera. And like nowhere has this phenomenon been more obvious in the world of clothing. Right. And so, you know, you have like had to make these difficult decisions over the years that basically just diluted your vision, right? And probably like, I mean, they suppress your creativity, you know, and they're depressing. Yeah. You get depressed. I mean, there are many reasons why working in fashion is really, really hard, mentally, specifically, like on how detrimental it is for your mental health. But one of those things is you go in with this creative vision and you never actually get to execute it, right? Yeah. Because of all the things we talked about. So now you have your own brand, and this year you made sweaters. Yeah. So why don't you tell me like about why they are different and, you know, why you made the decisions that you made?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to talk about them. I actually, when I like decided on the name Picnicwear for my brand, it was like my desire for it was for it to be a sweater brand. But when I looked in, like I did some like domestic factory like tours and stuff, and I realized like financially I would not be able to do it. But it was always a dream of mine to be actually able to design a super tight collection of sweaters that were without the restraints of what the industry, like my jobs, had been pushing on me, and all that dumbing down that you speak of. So, and through talking to people, like I felt like so many people were like, why can't I find a cotton sweater anymore? Which, tell me I'm wrong. From our research, like it is very hard to find a cotton sweater.
I didn't find one at all, by the way.
Me neither, to be honest.
Not one. Yeah. Like I went through so many sites, and I didn't see a single one anywhere. And you know what, I'm going to tell you, like early in my career, we still had cotton sweaters, even at Urban Outfitters.
Totally, for sure. But I think like back to the like weight conversation there, I think that that's a big part of it. Like, you know, synthetic fibers can be, like we said, really lofty and light and therefore cheap. Whereas like cotton is pretty naturally heavy. Like there's so many different things you can do with a fiber. So like it doesn't have to be, but generally speaking, it gets quite a bit heavier than a synthetic yarn does. So it just ends up being more expensive. So like a lot of people think of cotton like, oh, a cotton sweater should be cheap because it's cotton, which is a little twisted. But in reality, it's like, that's not the case at all. But yeah, I felt like it was true. There aren't a lot of cotton sweaters out there. And I totally respect that some people don't like wool as much as I do. And as much as I designed this, collection, and it was produced in Peru. And as much as I wanted to use like alpaca, I was like, oh gosh, like I know that so many people have issues with wool. So I was like, cotton is just lovely and feels amazing. But of course, true to the ethos of my brand, I only use materials, or vastly only use materials that are existing. And so I teamed up with the Endery, who sources dead stock yarn that's otherwise destined for the landfill, and they rescue it, and they're already dyed because it's literally leftover from a doll factory.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Also, just like, who doesn't love a nice doll factory leftover? I love it.
Exactly. I'm imagining that I haven't actually seen the dolls, but I'm imagining like they're like a knitted Peruvian doll type thing, not like a plastic doll or something, obviously, because it's cotton. But like what was great about that is that like, because they're dolls, they're all these amazing colors. And of course I gravitate towards colors, and I feel like when you look at the landscape of sweaters out there, it's actually very hard to find like a beautiful, brightly knit, like statement sweater. So, and I also, I was really inspired by the towels that I've collected over the years. So each sweater is inspired by a different towel that I love the graphic of. And the process was just really cool and fun because, well, first of all, it took a year and a half, which is like very slow, but it was very thoughtful. And, but yeah, so when the time came that I had to color the sweaters, they told me which colors were available, and I had to work with what was available. So I am so psyched on the color combos that I came up with, but it's even cooler to think that I was making them out of just I didn't have a paint box of colors where I could mix and match or whatever. It was I was restricted to a certain color palette, which was just probably one of my favorite things about being an upcycle designer is that creativity that it pushes you to have to push your boundaries and think outside of the box. It's not oh, I'm sitting at my desk and dreaming up this thing and it's going to have a huge ruffle. It's what can I do with the materials that are in front of me? And that's so much more fun.
It really is. I feel like it helps you, it makes you more innovative, but I think it also helps to have yourself sort of hemmed in, and it makes you able to be more creative,
Yeah. And it's weirdly having those parameters, those boundaries are kind of put you in this safe, cozy space where you know what you're working with. And it's cause sometimes having the sky's the limit is impossible to put yourself in that position where you could literally do anything. So having those restrictions are very inspiring to me.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. These sweaters are on your site right now for purchase, and they're all 100% cotton. If someone is inspired by our conversation to go buy one of these sweaters from you, how can they best take care of it to extend its life?
I mean, to be honest, I don't really wash my sweaters much. I pretty rarely do, but I've also had moth situations. So maybe I'm not the best person to ask for with that. But basically hand or machine wash cold. And what you should be doing with all your sweaters is not putting them in the dryer and not hanging them to dry. What you need to do is lay them flat. So oftentimes I'll lay out a towel on the ground or something, or I bought these, this hanging mechanism thing that's these mesh layers of mesh. So when I'm washing sweaters, cause I often will purchase and wash vintage sweaters, I will lay them on that. So it's laying flat, but it has the, a place for the air to circulate and let the moisture drip out. So yeah, I mean, that's not hard.
No.
Laying something on a towel is certainly not hard. But I would also say, like, just don't wash them that much. Like, they're not going to stink the way a synthetic sweater does.
It's true. It's true. I mean, honestly, like, it's interesting. The irony is never lost on me that we have so much synthetic clothing now, right? That makes you stinky, that you have to wash more often, that also doesn't hold up to washing. It's like a cycle, right? I mean, it's like there's all this like planned obsolescence in clothing that's kind of like accidental planned obsolescence. Like I've never sat in a meeting and said, the great news is that this is going to be such low quality that they'll have to buy another one, right? But it just is.
That's a really good point. Yeah. What's interesting is actually like we, like at Express, we did like wear testing to make sure the stuff would withstand like friction and wear, et cetera. And I was just like, this is really twisted what we're doing. It's like, we don't know what kind of brand we want to be. Because like we're like not sourcing fibers that will last a long time. We're wanting our customers to purchase over and over again, but we want to make sure that they last too. Like, do these people just have never-ending closets to contain all their clothes?
I mean, I think that's part of it, right? It's like, this is also the era of like plenty of stores who have opened like the Container Store to help you organize all the stuff you overbought, right? But it is interesting because I've worked a lot of places that did wear testing, and it was almost like we want people to just be able to wear it long enough that they won't be mad when it stops being nice anymore.
That's a really good point.
And it's about that fine line.
That probably sums it up.
Yeah. And so it's true. Like we never sat around and we're like, I think like honestly, as you know, when I would be working on wear test stuff as a buyer, I wasn't like thinking like, oh, we just want this to hang on long enough. But I actually was like, I'm doing the best job I can to put the best stuff out there for our customer. Like I really felt that way. It's just, that's not how it ends up working out, right?
And the big difference between like planned obsolescence in like the technology world or whatever, and in the fashion world, it's more perceived obsolescence. So we're relying on the perceived obsolescence, like on paper, not necessarily like it being uncool now versus it like being broken is what's being like really
that's
pushed
what it is.
A bit more thoughtfully. Not that that's really like considered so much, but like by this endless cycle of trends, that is what we're doing. So
it is. It's so weird to think about. Like, I think that's the thing. Like when I talk about all of this stuff and the evils of fast fashion, it's like I always want to call out that the vast majority of people working in this industry are people like me and you who we have the best intentions and we want to do the best things. And we are also trying to survive as well because, you know what? We're not paid well. We're overworked. As my career progressed, it was like I was doing the jobs of 3 or 4 or 5 people, you know, because the company didn't want to spend the money and our benefits were bad. And yet we still were like, if we don't hit these numbers in terms of profitability and sales, we won't have a job next year. And so you're just trying to survive. And it's only like when you get to step outside of it, like you and I have had that luxury of doing, that you start to see how broken it all is.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, for sure.
Like we weren't in there like, let's make the worst sweaters ever.
No. Oh, no. Never.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dani. This was so fun.
Thank you. I just want to say one more thing to your audience.
Okay.
I don't know how to put this because I don't want to make you like uncomfortable, but like, I just think that I want to thank you for like opening up this community and giving people a platform to speak. And like, you do such I'm like seriously going to get emotional, Amanda. You
oh my
do
God,
such
you're going to make me cry.
And like, I'll be honest, like like I've been a Patreon subscriber for you from the beginning. And there have been periods of time where I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally like, I can't afford this anymore. But I'm always like, no, Amanda is always doing the work. She never stops. It doesn't freaking matter. And I will say I've had over the years, even though it's been years since I was on your podcast, like I've had people come to me and say like, oh, I learned about you from Clotheshorse. And I just like the community that you've brought together is just really wonderful. And so like, even though I've had those moments where I'm like, oh, can I afford this anymore? I'm like, no, it is so important to me that Amanda is doing this work. And like, I just, everyone, like, if you can like support Amanda on, if you like listen to this podcast a lot, like I'm like seriously about to cry. Like you really, like please support her Patreon.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me, Dani. I know. I mean, I'm so grateful for all of you small businesses who support me. And honestly, at this point, like that is what has kept Clotheshorse going, because it's expensive.
Yeah.
To do this. It's not just like I talk in a microphone, and I don't get paid for this label.
Regardless of like the money you put in it, like you put so much time and energy and expertise and like heart. Like you put so much freaking heart into this.
I do. You know what, Dani, I'm like so grateful that you said that, even though I feel like really embarrassed right now. But it is true. And it feels really important to me to have your support and have you recognize that. And, you know, there are so many people, you included, who have become my friends thanks to Clotheshorse, you know? And so for me, it's been this amazing phenomenon that was born out of, I wouldn't say it was one of the darkest times of my life. The darkest time of my life was the, like, you know, few months after my partner died and before Dylan was born. That was like a time I'm not excited to ever repeat. But the months surrounding when I started Clotheshorse were hard. I mean, for so many of us, you know, it was 2020. I'd lost my job. We had to move out of the city because we couldn't afford to live there anymore. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was so afraid of getting sick and dying, you know, like so fearful all the time. And all the stuff was going on with the election. It was just like a really intense time.
Yeah. Oh, such a horrible time.
And back then, I would make 2 episodes a week because I was like, we all need each other right now, but I also need to do this.
Yeah, it was your survival mode.
It was my survival mode, yeah.
Yeah.
And it has changed over the years, right? Like I am Clotheshorse, right? And doing this work is really important to my happiness and my faith and optimism in the world, but it is also like work, you know? When I started this, I didn't have a job.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I have had a job, and this has been like what I do instead of relaxing, making friends, stuff like that. So, but it's important to me. And I think, you know, the same thing goes for like you and all the other small makers in our community, all of you who like, I mean, you worked so hard on these sweaters. You're all working so hard to do things right, when so many people will tell us, myself included, why do you care so much? Why do you work so hard to do it right? Why do you care? Why are you even engaging with that person or sharing information with them or helping them out or whatever else it is? And it is because we all believe in the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's because it's like, if I don't care, then who freaking will?
That's how I feel. Like I said, a couple months ago, I was like, I just don't think I can do Clotheshorse anymore. Like, it's so exhausting what people expect from me and the microscope I'm under and just like the labor I'm doing for everybody every day.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't think I can do it anymore. And then I was like, first off, Dustin was like, that's like not even an option. So you just need to stop thinking that way, which I mean, how lucky am I to have a partner who feels that way? But I was like, if I don't do this, who will?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So I'm going to keep doing it. But thank you. Thank you. Your kind words really, they really mean a lot to me. I'm trying not to get all like choked up, but thank you.
I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And I know so many other listeners feel that way.
It's really nice to hear it. You know how it is. You get one trolly message and that eclipses the like 100 kind messages you've received in the last year. Man, I hate that.
That's why I started like screenshotting the positive messages, and I have like a folder in my photos on my phone. So like when I get one of those trolls, I like look through there and I'm like, okay.
Same. I have a folder for nice emails that I get from people at the Clotheshorse account. And I always tell people like, thank you for this. I'm going to put this in my folder.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes I need that. It is a weird world that when people will come and fight with you about like fast fashion.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you so much to Dani for taking all of that time to share her expertise and everything else with us. Right now, Dani is in the process of finalizing her first ever sewing pattern called the Deja Vu dress. I am really excited for this to go on sale because it's a really cool baby doll dress, very versatile. It's the best silhouette in my opinion. And the pattern is actually being designed with upcycled textiles in mind. I'm definitely buying it as soon as it goes on sale because I think it'll be a good, middle of winter doldrums kind of project. If you're interested in learning more about the sewing pattern, I know as I speak, I'm pretty sure the testing process has begun. Or if you want to see Dani's incredible sweaters, be sure to give her a follow on Instagram. I would suspect that the vast majority of you already do that, but just in case, you'll find her as at Picnicwear. This is me speaking off the cuff here. I didn't write anything down for this, but it was on my mind. As I was editing, I'd forgotten about the last thing that Dani brought up about supporting Clotheshorse, and I thought about editing it out because this is so silly, but a few years ago, someone on Reddit complained that when people called in to the hotline or sent audio essays and they mentioned how much they loved Clotheshorse or said something complimentary or nice in it, that the fact that I kept that in was really annoying to them, and I was like, oh my God, the last thing I want to be is annoying. And so I started cutting that stuff out. And then one day I sort of had this reckoning of people say those things because they want people to hear them, right? And so I started putting that stuff back in. And you know what? I am grateful that Dani brought that up because I'm not good at bringing that stuff up. And I also sometimes feel embarrassed by how much passion and work and thought and time that I put into Clotheshorse, whether it's these episodes every week, all the content on social media, or the time I spend responding to your messages and answering your questions. The time I spend thinking about what's next and how I can do more for the community and to lift up slow fashion and to lift up small businesses, right? So I guess I'm glad that Dani brought it up. I've been really, and I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same way right now. It's really hard every week to sit down and work on Clotheshorse because I think about what's going on right now in Gaza. It's one of many, many horrible things happening around the world. I mean, we can't forget about what's happening in Congo. We can't forget about what's happening in China with the Uyghur Muslims and so many other just horrible, horrible things happening around the world. So many things that it's hard for me to see how I can help, right? And that's hard in itself. It's an emotionally really difficult place to be when you're I know this is wrong and I don't know what I personally can do to help. And the best thing we can do is, continue to advocate for what is right and to reach out to our elected officials and make our voices known and to have conversations with people in real life. And when we have the money to send the money, I suppose really everything, all of the bad things in the world, including what we talk about with fast fashion, and the system of exploitation that fuels that industry, that all of these things, we have to have that same approach, that same perspective of I feel overwhelmed. I don't know how I can make an impact as one person, and recognize that we can, especially when we're all making that effort together at the same time. And there will be times where we feel like nothing good is coming of that work, that we feel frustrated, that we feel that the decisions are not in our hands. I know a lot of you are feeling that way right now. I certainly am, about many things, honestly. And the past month or so, I've been kind of why am I making Clotheshorse when the world is falling apart, when there are so many people suffering right now, right? So many people are losing their loved ones. They're losing their lives themselves. They're experiencing trauma and starvation and pain and illness. And it gets really hard sometimes, right? To see why I would work on Clotheshorse during that time period. And then I have to remember that all of the other bad stuff in the world doesn't stop because one bad thing is happening right now. Because as we've seen over the past few years, it's just so many people suffering around the world, animals suffering around the world, the planet suffering around the world as a result of so many bad things happening all the time. And I can't sit out Clotheshorse, even if it feels hard sometimes, because things don't change if we don't continue to talk about these things, right? And what's going badly in the world. And the voice of one can motivate so many other people to do the things that I was saying, like to reach out to our elected representatives, to have difficult conversations with other people, to share information, to give the money when we can, all of these things, right? One voice leads to 2 voices, leads to 4 voices, leads to 8 voices on any issue. And I can't stop talking about the effects of fast fashion and fast everything, because one, they're not going to go away if we stop talking about them. They might even get worse. And I feel like we're in such a place right now where we're making a lot of progress, even though it feels slow. When I look back in hindsight, I see the progress. And I don't want us to lose that, you know? So I'm going to keep making Clotheshorse. I'm going to keep talking about these things in the midst of so many other things that keep me up at night, that make me cry, that make me just take those moments where I feel like I can't even breathe because the enormity of the pain, the suffering of others makes it feel like I can feel it. Makes me feel like I feel those feelings too, right? It's visceral. So yeah, if you are feeling the same way where you don't know where you fit in, where you make a difference, how to cope with the enormity of what's happening in Gaza or what's happening in China or what's happening anywhere else in the world right now, I want you to know that all of us feel the same way. And I will be there to support you through that. This community will be there to support me and you through all of this. And we will all see things get better, but we have to stick it out. And giving up, staying quiet, stepping away, it isn't going to change that. So yeah, thank you for listening to another episode of Clotheshorse. If you liked what you heard, you can leave a rating, maybe even a review on Apple Podcasts. And most importantly, you can tell your friends. That's how change happens, right? We need a lot of people, and we start with the people around us. I like to think of us all as these little tiny circles surrounded by other circles. And when they join our circle, it's a bigger circle. And soon all these big circles start overlapping, and then it's one big circle. That's what I picture when I close my eyes and I think about the power of community and care and support. So yeah, tell your friends to listen to Clotheshorse. That was a really convoluted way around that. If you would like to support my work financially, which I would, so you have no idea how much I would appreciate that. You can learn more at patreon.com/Clotheshorse podcast. You can also take advantage of the Apple Premium subscription, where you get access to the complete archives of Clotheshorse. But most importantly, even if you've heard all those episodes 100 times, it's a really easy way to support my work here. And there are other ways you can support me. You can find all that on Instagram in my bio there. Last but not least, of course, thank you as always to Justin Travis White for our music and audio support, and see you all next week.